The livestock auction wasn't advertised in Bitter Dust Gulch, but every man with a dollar to spend knew it was happening. February 1882. The square behind the general store reeked of manure and tobacco spit. Men stood in huddled groups, their boots sinking into cold-packed dirt, steam rising from their mouths in the bitter Arizona morning. Most came for mules or tools. Some came for the spectacle. No one expected what happened when Wade Coulter arrived. The crack of a Colt peacemaker split the air before Wade even reached the auction. A horse thief lay writhing in the dust, clutching his shattered knee, as Wade spun the revolver on his finger and slid it back into the worn leather holster on his hip. The movement was fluid, practiced, the motion of a man who'd done it 1,000 times. "Next time, pick someone else's, Morgan," Wade said, his voice a gravel road. The gathered men parted like water as he strode toward the auction platform. Wade Coulter, 41, stood 6'3" with shoulders broadened by years of labor and war. A jagged scar ran from his left temple to the corner of his mouth, a rebel saber's gift at Gettysburg. Folks called him Cold Eye Coulter behind his back, on account of the steel-blue gaze that hadn't softened since he buried his wife and unborn child 3 winters past. He hadn't spoken more than 10 words together to another soul since that day. Just worked his isolated ranch 16 miles outside town, brought his cattle to market twice a year, and kept to himself. Until today. Bill Rawlins stood on the rickety auction platform, tobacco juice staining his unkempt beard. Former Border Patrol, dishonorable discharge. The kind of man who'd shoot you for your boots, then wear them to your funeral. He yanked a rope, and from behind the platform stumbled a young woman. "Apache stock," Rawlins announced with a yellow-toothed grin. "Name's T." The woman stood barefoot on frozen ground, toes curled against the cold. Matted black hair hung over her shoulders, and a deerskin dress, torn across the front, barely covered her bronze skin. But it was her eyes that grabbed Wade's attention, pale gray and unfocused, staring at nothing. "She's blind," Rawlins continued. "Don't talk neither. Damaged goods from the Canyon Creek raid. Figured somebody might find a use for her." The men around Wade chuckled. One called out, "What good's a blind squaw?" Another answered, "Don't need eyes to warm a bed." The laughter rolled through the crowd like something rotten. Wade's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath the scar tissue. His hand hovered near his holster without conscious thought. T stood motionless, chin raised despite the rope around her wrists. She didn't flinch at the crude remarks, didn't turn toward the voices. Her dignity amid humiliation struck something deep in Wade's chest, a feeling he thought he'd buried alongside Sarah. Rawlins yanked the rope again. "Starting bid's $2. Who'll give me 2 for this Apache filly?" Wade had seen enough. He strode forward, boots heavy in the dirt. Men stepped back, conversation dying as he reached the platform. Without a word, he pulled a leather pouch from his coat and dropped $5 at Rawlins' feet. The coins landed with a definitive clink. "Taking up charity cases, Coulter," Rawlins sneered, though his hand quickly scooped up the money. Wade didn't answer. He drew his knife, a 10-inch Arkansas toothpick, and sliced through the rope binding T's wrists. The crowd went silent as death. "She's Apache war spoils," Rawlins said, voice dropping low. "You remember what they did at Yellow Canyon? To women and children?" Wade's eyes locked with Rawlins. "I remember what you did at Canyon Creek. To women and children." The old accusation hung between them. Everyone knew Rawlins had been drummed out of the cavalry for excessive force against natives. Rumors claimed he'd blinded this very girl during the raid. "You're making a mistake, Major," Rawlins hissed, using Wade's old military rank like a curse. Wade placed a hand gently under T's elbow. She flinched but didn't pull away. As he guided her down the steps, Rawlins called after him, "I'll be coming for what's mine, Coulter. Count on it." Wade didn't turn. He led T through town, past staring faces and whispers. Cold Eyes lost his mind. Reckon a blind girl won't notice his scars. Heard he killed 30 Union boys at Antietam with just a knife. Wade helped T onto his Morgan Stallion, wrapping his coat around her shoulders before mounting behind her. Her body was rigid against his chest as they rode away from Bitter Dust Gulch. The trail home wasn't a trail at all, just a winding path through saguaro and mesquite, climbing steadily toward the foothills. Wade kept one hand on the reins, the other on his Winchester across his lap. His eyes constantly scanned the horizon, checking for dust clouds or reflection off metal, signs of followers. As they crossed into Apache territory, he noted fresh tracks cutting across their path. 4 riders, heavy horses, moving fast. Raiders, maybe, or Rawlins' friends already hunting him. Wade adjusted course, taking a rockier path that would hide their trail. T seemed to sense the change. Her head tilted slightly, listening. 4 men, Wade said simply. Following. She nodded once, understanding. They reached Wade's ranch as dusk painted the mesas red. The cabin sat beneath an overhanging ridge, a natural fortress with clear sight lines in 3 directions and a sheer cliff at its back. A corral held 3 horses besides his Morgan. A barn leaned slightly to one side. The place wasn't pretty, but it was defensible, and it was his. Wade lifted T down, noting how she tested the ground with her toe before putting weight on it. Smart, careful, a survivor. He led her inside, watched as her hands immediately found the edge of the door, tracing its outline. Table's 3 steps ahead, he said. Stove to the right. Your room's through that door. Has its own exit. Bolts on the inside. T's head turned toward his voice, her expression unreadable. I won't come in unless you want me to, Wade added. For the first time, a flicker of surprise crossed her face. She nodded once and moved toward the room, one hand extended to feel her way. At the doorway, she paused, turned back toward him, and waited. Wade understood. T, that's your name? She nodded again. Wade Coulter, he responded. She disappeared into the room. The bolt slid into place with a soft click. Wade stoked the fire, put coffee on to boil, and cleaned his peacemaker by habit. Outside, the wind picked up, whistling through the canyon. He checked the window, surveying the land around his property. Rawlins wouldn't wait long. The man had a reputation to maintain, and Wade had publicly humiliated him. He'll come, Wade muttered to himself, sliding a fresh cartridge into the chamber. And I'll be ready. Dawn broke cold and clear. Wade woke to the smell of coffee already brewing. He reached for his pistol before his eyes were fully open. Old habits. Then paused at the sound of movement in the main room. T stood by the stove, one hand resting lightly on the counter edge. She'd washed her face and braided her hair. The deerskin dress was still torn, but she'd tied it more securely with a piece of cord. Wade watched silently as she moved around the cabin. 8 steps from stove to table, 6 from table to door, 4 from door to water barrel. She was mapping the space, committing it to memory. Each movement precise, measured. Morning, he said finally. She turned toward his voice and nodded. You made coffee. Another nod. Wade poured 2 cups, placed one on the table, and sat down. T found her way to the chair opposite him, her fingers skimming the table edge before locating the cup. She sipped carefully. Got chores, Wade said, finishing his coffee. Horses need tending. Fence on the south pasture needs mending. T nodded, then pointed to herself, and then the cabin. You want to help here? Wade asked. She nodded again. Do what you want, he said. Don't need to earn your keep. T's mouth set in a firm line. She pointed to herself again, more insistently, then made sweeping motions with her hands. Wade understood. She wanted purpose, not charity. All right, he conceded. There's corn needs grinding, chickens need feeding, plenty to do. He left her to it, heading out to the barn. Throughout the morning, he kept one eye on the cabin. Through the window, he could see T moving with increasing confidence. She found the grinding stone, measured corn by feel, worked the pestle with strong, steady hands. Later, she located the broom behind the door and swept with methodical precision. By midday, Wade had checked and reinforced the perimeter of his property. He'd set up tripwires with cans at strategic approaches, positioned his spare shotgun behind the woodpile, and refreshed the ammunition caches he kept hidden around the ranch. When he spotted dust on the horizon, he wasn't surprised. Two riders approaching from the south. Wade grabbed his rifle and moved to higher ground, tracking them through his scope. Not Rawlins, but men he recognized from town. Johnson and Weathers, known associates of the former patrolman. Wade whistled sharply. 3 short bursts. Inside the cabin, T's head snapped up at the signal. She moved quickly to the door, closing and barring it. Smart woman. Wade positioned himself behind an outcropping, rifle trained on the approaching riders. When they were 30 yards out, he called, "Close enough!" The men reined in. "We're just passing through, Coulter," Johnson shouted back. "You're trespassing," Wade replied. "Turn around." "Rollins sent us to talk," Weathers said. "He's willing to buy back the girl. Double what you paid." "Not for sale." "She's a dangerous savage," Johnson pressed. "Killed 2 men before Rollins broke her. You're harboring a murderer." Wade adjusted his aim, centering the crosshairs on Johnson's chest. "Last warning." The men exchanged glances. "Rollins won't forget this," Weathers called as they wheeled their horses around. "Neither will I," Wade muttered, watching until they disappeared back toward town. When he returned to the cabin, T was waiting, a kitchen knife clutched in her hand. She tilted her head questioningly. "Just scouts," Wade explained. "Rollins testing defenses." T nodded, her grip on the knife relaxing slightly. "You know how to use that?" Wade asked. She nodded again, demonstrating a practiced upward thrust. "Good," he said. "Might need to." That evening, Wade pulled a bundle of fabric from a trunk and began cutting. T sat by the fire, head cocked toward the sound of scissors. Her hands worked a needle through a torn seam in her dress, proving her blindness hadn't stolen her skills. "Made you something," Wade said when he finished, holding out a simple cotton dress. "Your other one's barely holding together." T set down her sewing and approached. Her fingers explored the garment, testing seams and fabric with expert touch. She nodded once, appreciatively. "War taught me to sew," Wade explained, though she hadn't asked. "Field hospital, 1863. Doctor made me stitch up the other men when I was healing. Said idle hands were the devil's workshop." T's fingers found Wade's hand, rested there briefly in thanks. Then she took the dress and retreated to her room. When she emerged, Wade was cleaning his rifle. She stood straighter in the new dress, her dignity restored. For a moment, she reminded him so much of Sarah that his chest ached. But T wasn't Sarah. Where his wife had been gentle summer rain, this woman was desert lightning, beautiful, dangerous, survivor of storms he could only imagine. "You'll need boots," he said gruffly. "Got some might fit with extra socks." That night they sat by the fire, the silence between them comfortable. Wade carved a piece of pine while T braided leather strips into what looked like a bracelet. "Why'd you take me?" she asked suddenly, her voice surprising him. Low and musical, if slightly rusty from disuse. Wade's knife paused mid-stroke. "You talk." "When there's something worth saying," she replied. He considered her question. "Couldn't leave you there." "You could have." Wade resumed carving. "Saw too much of that in the war. Men treating people like property." "Most men see a blind Apache as less than property," T observed. "Especially a woman." "I'm not most men." "No," she agreed. You're not. She didn't ask about his scar. He didn't ask about her eyes. Some wounds didn't need words. The attack came just before dawn 3 days later. Wade woke to the soft jingle of his alarm. Tin cans strung on the western approach. He was on his feet instantly, rifle in hand. He touched T's door once in warning, then moved to the window. 6 men on horseback, approaching fast. Rollins at the lead. T, he called softly. Trouble. She emerged from her room already dressed, fully alert. How many? 6. Rollins and 5 others. She nodded unafraid. What do you need me to do? Trap door under the rug, Wade instructed. Root cellar. Take the shotgun. Don't come out until I call. If I don't, he hesitated. East tunnel leads to the canyon. Follow it a mile to water. T found the trap door by memory, lifted it. Wade handed her the loaded shotgun. Don't miss, he said. I never do, she replied, disappearing into the darkness. Wade positioned himself at the reinforced window, rifle resting on the sill. When Rollins and his men reached the clearing before the cabin, they spread out in a semicircle. Coulter, Rollins shouted, send out the Apache and we'll let you live. Wade's answer was a rifle shot that knocked the hat off Rollins' head. The men scattered, diving for cover. For 10 minutes, the air filled with gunfire. Wade moved between positions, firing from different windows, creating the illusion of multiple defenders. He dropped 2 men with clean shots before a bullet grazed his shoulder, tearing through muscle. Wade grunted, pressing his back against the wall as blood soaked his shirt. Outside, Rollins barked orders. 3 men rushed the front door while Rollins circled toward the back. The door splintered under a battering ram. Wade fired twice, dropping 1 attacker, but the other 2 burst through. He switched to his peacemaker, shooting 1 in the chest. The last man tackled him, driving him back against the table. They grappled, Wade's wounded shoulder screaming in protest. His opponent, Weathers, pressed a knife toward his throat. Wade strained against the blade, feeling it bite into his skin. A thunderous blast echoed through the cabin. Weathers collapsed, his back shredded by shotgun pellets. Behind him stood T, the smoking shotgun still aimed where the man had stood. She'd emerged from the cellar, firing by sound alone. Behind you, Wade shouted as Rollins appeared in the back doorway. T spun, but Rollins was already charging. He knocked the shotgun aside and grabbed her, pressing a knife to her throat. Drop it, Coulter, Rollins snarled. Wade aimed his peacemaker, blood dripping down his arm. Let her go. Put down the gun or she dies right now. Wade hesitated, finger on the trigger. At this distance, he couldn't miss, but neither could Rollins. T stood perfectly still in Rollins' grip, but her hand was moving, inching toward the pocket of her dress. Last chance, Major, Rollins growled. Wade lowered his pistol. In that instant, T struck. Her hand emerged from her pocket, holding the kitchen knife. She drove it up and back with practiced precision, burying it in Rollins' thigh. The man howled, his grip loosening just enough. Wade raised his peacemaker and fired. The bullet caught Rollins between the eyes. Silence fell. Outside, hoofbeats pounded as the surviving attackers fled. T stood trembling. Blood, Rollins, not hers, spattered across her dress. Wade crossed to her, touched her shoulder gently. You saved my life, he said. She nodded. You saved mine first. Later, as T cleaned and bandaged Wade's wounded shoulder, news reached them from town. A messenger, braver than most, brought word that a large gang of outlaws was raiding ranches all through the territory. Sheriff Hollister's dead, the young man reported nervously, eyeing the bodies Wade had dragged outside. Rollins' gang killed him yesterday. They're hitting Bitter Dust Gulch tonight. 15, maybe 20 men. Not my problem, Wade said flatly. They're saying you're next on their list, Mr. Coulter, after they're done with the town. Wade exchanged a glance with T. She couldn't see him, but somehow she sensed his question. "We can't stay here," she said. "Not with you wounded. Not against 20 men." "Town's no safer," Wade argued. "Together it might be," she countered. 2 hours later, they rode into Bitter Dust Gulch. Wade's shoulder was bandaged tight, his rifle across his lap. T rode behind him, shotgun hidden beneath a blanket. The town was in chaos. Men boarded up windows while women gathered children. Panic hung in the air like gun smoke. Wade dismounted at the town square, helping T down. Townsfolk gathered, murmuring at the sight of Coulter and his Apache companion. "Rollins is dead," Wade announced, "but his gang's still coming." "What do we care?" someone shouted. "You brought this on us, you're—" "Coulter!" Wade's cold blue eyes swept the crowd. "I fought at Antietam, at Gettysburg, at Yellow Tavern, led men against worse odds than this." "You expecting us to fight?" another man challenged. "I'm expecting you to decide whether this town is worth defending," Wade replied, his voice carrying across the square. "Whether your homes, your families, are worth it, or whether you'll let a bunch of cutthroats run you off your land." Silence fell. "I'll stand," Wade continued, "with or without you." An older man stepped forward, Thompson, the blacksmith. "I'll stand with you, Major Coulter." Another joined him, then another. By sunset, Wade had organized 30 men into defensive positions. He stationed sharpshooters in the church tower and hotel upper floors. Barricades blocked the main street. Every approach was covered. T moved through it all with uncanny awareness, helping prepare ammunition, carrying water to the defenders. No one called her squaw now, not after word spread of how she'd helped Wade kill Rollins. "They're coming," she said suddenly, head tilted toward the eastern road. Wade strained his eyes, seeing nothing in the gathering dusk. "You sure?" 23 riders, she confirmed. Heavy horses, moving fast. 2 minutes later, the first lookout spotted them. The battle for Bitter Dust Gulch lasted 3 hours. The raiders came hard and confident, expecting easy pickings. Instead, they met organized resistance. Wade's military experience turned storekeepers and farmers into an effective fighting force. But the outlaws were numerous and desperate. They set fire to buildings, creating chaos. In the confusion, Wade took a bullet to his leg. He collapsed behind the barricade, blood pooling beneath him. "Get him to the church!" Thompson shouted to 2 younger men. They half-carried Wade to the makeshift infirmary in the church basement. T was already there, helping the town doctor. Her hands found Wade immediately, assessing his wound by touch. "Not good," she murmured. "Town's overrun," Wade gasped through pain. "Need to get back out there." "You'll bleed to death," the doctor warned. Outside, gunfire intensified. The defenders were losing ground. "They need leadership," Wade insisted, trying to rise. His leg buckled, sending him crashing back down. T stood suddenly. "Tell me the layout. Every building, every street." Wade stared at her. "What?" "I can move in darkness better than any of them," she said. "Tell me where to go." Understanding dawned. Wade described the town square, the positions of defenders, the locations of ammunition caches. T listened intently, building a map in her mind. "They won't follow a blind Apache woman," the doctor objected. "They will if she brings them victory," Wade replied. He pressed his peacemaker into T's hand. 6 shots. Make them count." T nodded, tucking the pistol into her belt. "Keep him alive, doctor," she ordered, then vanished up the stairs. She moved through town like a ghost, using sound and memory to navigate the chaos. Where defenders faltered, she appeared with fresh ammunition and Wade's instructions. Where outlaws breached barricades, she directed concentrated fire to repel them. The tide turned gradually. The raiders, expecting easy prey, found themselves outmaneuvered by this strange alliance led by a blind woman. The battle culminated at the town square. 4 remaining outlaws, including their leader, had taken position at the hotel. T gathered 6 defenders with rifles. On my signal, she instructed, positioning them by sound. Fire at the second-floor windows. How do you know they're there? One man questioned. I can hear them breathing, she answered simply. Her signal came, 3 sharp whistles, just as Wade had taught her. The defenders fired in unison. 3 outlaws fell. The leader broke cover, running for his horse. T tracked him by sound, raising Wade's peacemaker. The square fell silent. Even the defenders held their breath as the blind woman aimed at a target she couldn't see. She fired once. The outlaw leader dropped mid-stride. By dawn, Bitter Dust Gulch was secure. 13 raiders dead, the rest fled. 4 townspeople lost, a dozen wounded, including Wade, pale from blood loss but alive. When T returned to the church, townsfolk parted before her with newfound respect. She moved directly to Wade's side, her hands finding his face. Town's safe, she reported. Wade's fingers weakly clasped hers. Never doubted it. The town council convened that afternoon, their first unanimous vote, to offer Wade Coulter the position of sheriff, their second to grant T full citizenship of Bitter Dust Gulch, the first Apache to receive such recognition. Wade declined the badge. Not looking for a job, he said, just wanted to protect what's mine. His eyes found T across the room. A month later, they returned to the ranch. Wade's leg was healing. Though he'd always walk with a slight limp, the cabin had been repaired, stronger than before. On the porch, Wade sat cleaning his peacemaker while T worked on a new leather holster, her fingers crafting intricate designs by feel. Never asked, Wade said suddenly, what happened at Canyon Creek? How you lost your sight? T's hands stilled. Rollins struck me with his rifle when I fought back, after he killed my family. Wade nodded, though she couldn't see it. I'm sorry. Don't be, she replied. If I could see, I'd never have learned to hear a man's heart beat at 20 paces. Never would have found you. Found me? Wade asked. At the auction. Heard your heart. Different from the others. Steady, strong. She smiled slightly. Knew you were either my salvation or my death. And now, T's fingers traced the silver ring on her hand, fashioned from one of the $5 he'd paid for her. Now I know you're both. Wade leaned forward, kissed her gently. Reckon I can live with that. Below them, the desert stretched vast and unforgiving. But for the first time in years, neither of them faced it alone. They had each found something worth fighting for. They laughed when he took the blind Apache girl home until she saved their entire town, firing with deadly accuracy at enemies she couldn't see, navigating a battlefield guided only by sound. In the merciless Arizona territory of 1882, a broken Civil War veteran and a blind Native woman found in each other the strength to heal and the courage to stand against impossible odds.